Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. The January transfer window has closed. Are Spurs in a stronger position? Probably not. But what I would say is I feel like this squad is now something closer to what Antonio Conte actually wants. And that's a whole different thing. And I'm going to try and pack in absolutely loads into this. I'm going to try not to go past the normal amount of time, but there is a lot to fit in. And the reason I say that is exactly what I just said to you in terms of, are Spurs stronger? Probably not. But also on the flip side, I really do think that this has been shaped, especially in one day. This squad has been shaped into more of a Conte vehicle almost to start getting it where it needs to be. And yeah, if that's confused you, I understand it, but that's why we're going to have this video to kind of properly explain it. You know, it was always kind of acknowledged that, we've said this a million times, that the summer was going to be the crunch one, but Conte was very clear in his kind of feeling that there had to be some little bits done in January to essentially start the process, start getting the squad to where it needed to be. And I think even the biggest critics of what's happened in this transfer window would probably admit there has been a movement towards what it needs to be. I think probably the question would be, is it enough? And obviously at this stage it isn't. But then again, going back to what Conte said, he said very clearly, you know, you're not going to fix the issues in this squad within one, maybe even two transfer windows. So we've got to be fair that, you know, the man knows what he's talking about. He is a guy that is, you know, absolutely steeped in success and knows exactly what he's doing. And from what I understand, we're going to find out more on Friday at the press conference, obviously. You'll be asked a lot. But from what I understand, I'm told by those around Antonio Conte that he's content enough with what's been done thus far. You know, all managers will tell you that they want more done in a transfer window. They're never happy. I think even Jose Mourinho told us that in a press conference a couple of years back. You know, I understand Conte's no different. Of course, he'd always want more. But I am told that he's content with what's been done. And, you know, specifically, the various things he's asked for have been kind of done, which is something we're definitely going to talk about, because there's quite a few things he's called for when he's got his own way. And I know there's a whole back Conte thing that's been going on, the old hashtag. And I guess in those respects, not all respects, but in those respects or aspects, he has been. He has been. And we'll get into all of that. So, I mean, let's start with those. I suppose the biggest things that I think he's asked for were players going. And I don't think you can disagree that Spurs have been pretty ruthless in that regard, really. In terms of big names, big money players have gone out the door. Conte's got this very clear thing that he says, you might have picked up in his press conferences. When there's a player that he likes and believes in, he has this clear expression of, I can count on him. He's one I can count on. It's very clear who he couldn't count on, who he felt he couldn't count on. And what I understand about this transfer window was there was a real feeling that they had to almost like cleanse the dressing room of unhappy voices. And, you know, that's not to be taken as difficult people or people that are a pain in the backside, you know, rebellious types. What it is more is just a natural kind of, you know, just a natural feeling, I guess, when you're not playing regularly, you're not a happy person. That subconsciously, without you realising, maybe just affects the way that you interact with others. It can affect the mood. It can affect the things that might be said. And, you know, I think Conte was very clear that he had this evaluation meeting. You know, we've spoken about this at length. It was the second one at the start of this month, and he made it very clear in that there were certain players that he didn't believe he wanted as part of his squad anymore, and that he wanted a better team spirit, a more tight-knit nature to the squad, something that Poch used to have back in the day. And there's a feeling maybe that Spurs have lost that. There's either players have gone stale, players needed change, whatever. But he wanted to kind of go back, or at least create his own new, lean, hungry, tight-knit squad that will all fight tooth and nail for each other. And this is what I mean when I think this squad feels a little bit more at the end of the window like one of those. You know, we can all debate the quality of those that have gone out, or certainly the glimpses of quality that they know they're capable of. But in terms of, what consistently managers were getting out of them, that's probably where the question marks are. He said, didn't he? He said as well, Conte, I've given my evaluation of the squad and I hope the club listen. And they did. They really did. I mean, it says a lot, doesn't it, really, about the power that Conte's now got, that you've got the two most expensive signings in Tottenham history, Tanguy Ndombele and Giovani Lo Celso, together, all in, with all the future fees as well, more than £110 million worth of players there. Just two of them. And he's come in and essentially said, nah, get him out. And Spurs have. They've taken a hit as well. Spurs have farmed them both out on loan for players worth more than 110 million at the time, just 2.5 years ago. And Conte has had the power to say, just get them out. Whatever way you do it, just get them out. And that's happened. And Dele Alli, another player that Spurs have, in previous years, even Jose Mourinho, with the power that he came in with, it was clear that he didn't really fancy Dele Alli. Yet Spurs kind of huffed and puffed and didn't really want him to go. Maybe there was a perception that if Jose went, the next manager could turn Dele around, and clearly that hasn't been the case. Let's go into these kind of the specifics. So, if you weren't aware, Tanguy's gone back to Lyon, which, everyone knows my opinions on Tanguy. I put a GIF on when he went, put a GIF on Twitter of Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith, the last of the Star Wars prequels movies, screaming, "You were the chosen one," Anakin Skywalker, because that's kind of my feelings towards Tanguy. He was meant to be the chosen one. He was the most expensive footballer Spurs have ever bought. He was meant to be the new Moussa Dembele and then some. It just hasn't happened. It just hasn't. There's been little glimpses, and I think he's still one of the most naturally gifted players I've seen play a game of football for Tottenham Hotspur, but it just wasn't enough in the end. So he heads off back to Lyon, and I think, unfortunately, that says everything. It does. As much as, Lyon are a very good side. This is not to say that it's some Sunday league or pub team or something, but Tanguy had aspirations of, a belief that he should be playing for the elite. And I think heading back, I don't want to say tail between his legs, because it's not quite that. He's kind of been half pushed out, half he did want to leave anyway. But he is just heading back to where he came from, whence he came. So, and the actual deal itself, it's this is a good thing about foreign clubs as well, is that they often give you more specifics of the finances. It's a thing that English clubs really don't do, but they do. So we know that he's gone back on a loan with a £1.2 million fee. I'm not entirely sure on the wages. I'd heard that Lyon are taking the bulk of his wages. Not all of them, I don't think, but the bulk of them. So that's good for Tottenham's wage bill. So a £1.2 million loan fee, and then they have believed to be an option to buy him back permanently for £54 million. So if they were to do that, and that's a big if, because that is a lot of money, especially for a Ligue 1 side. If they did, Spurs would recoup much of the money for him. But that's something to look at in the summer. That's a whole other thing. And Tanguy seems happy. He put a nice message out yesterday saying, really happy to be back, but also want to wish, a really good rest of the season to Tottenham. He's not a guy that really uses social media. I don't get the impression he's got social media people that run it for him. I think he mostly appears to do it himself very infrequently. Often it's a photo without a caption and stuff like that. So I get the impression this was probably him actually saying that. Whereas I think a lot of the time footballers' social medias really aren't them saying the thing they're saying. But yeah, he heads off, and it's sad. It is sad, because I think he could argue, he could really be one of the best, but there's a lot more to it than just ability, and we know that. But I'm not going to go over too much old ground with Ndombele. With old Tanguy, I hope he does well there. I hope he does. Lo Celso, there were a fair few clubs interested in him. A bit like Tanguy. Tanguy had a fair few interested in, eventually chose Lyon. Some of them had problems, I think, in bringing him in as well. With Celso, I think he turned down a couple of options, and then Villarreal popped up. A chance to meet up again with Juan Foyth and also Serge Aurier as well. Yeah, that one's an interesting one. We know it's a loan deal. I know it's got an option to buy. I've had that confirmed, but no real specifics over exactly the kind of price and what that would be, or really also their wage. How much of the wages they're taking on either. I'm not too sure about that. That one's a little bit vaguer, but like I say, I know it's a loan with an option to buy. Gio, he's a difficult one. He's slightly different to Tanguy in that I think injuries have really played a part. He's never really got a rhythm. He's never really established himself as a first-team guaranteed starter, whereas I think Tanguy, there were times when you felt he would be. Whereas with Gio, it's always been a case of, in and out of the squad. In and out of the team. There's an element of him being forced out towards the end. That's certainly that last match. It's a difficult one. I think he's shown moments where he can do stuff, and I think he's probably got that higher work rate than you see from Tanguy. More aggression, I think, in what he does. Probably not as naturally gifted as Tanguy, but also able to set up a goal. I think the key thing with him is he hasn't really shown what he is, where he should be as a player and what position he should be in. We've seen Gio play in a deeper role. We've seen him play further up the pitch, but ultimately the amount of goals he's scored and the assists are probably not enough for a player of his quality. Which I think, has he only scored the Man City goal in the Premier League? I think it could be that goal in for Mourinho's in the one where they were kind of backs to the wall, but they won 2-0. I feel like that was the only time he scored in the Premier League. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, just another one who's never really justified his fee. He had that incredible couple of months when he was still on loan that essentially got him the permanent deal from Real Betis. Just never pushed on. Never did. And now he heads to Villarreal. I'm sure he'll do very well. He does very well for Argentina. He's currently on international duty right now with them. For Spurs, a bit like Tanguy, they kind of want him to shine. They want him to do incredibly well. So if for some reason Villarreal or Lyon don't take up those two options to buy, then there'll be more interest in other clubs buying them as well. Because it just doesn't feel like there's any real long-term future for them, especially if Conte is still the manager, which, we hope he will be in the summer. Gio heads off. Then there's Dele. Then there's Dele Alli. Oh, man, you know what? I did feel genuinely really sad when I saw the stuff that went out last night. Last night and this morning. Last night, Spurs put out a video, which was a really lovely video. It not only showed just how talented Dele Alli is and was and what he did for Tottenham, but also had kind of the lighter fun moments and just showed what a kind of a great character he is as well, and how that side of him has been. I don't know about you all, but I don't think I've identified with a Tottenham team as much as I did during those peak Poch years. And I think a lot of that was down to players like Dele Alli as well. Dele Alli was fun. He was a great character. He, got on well with so many other players. There was just this element of happiness and fun about that squad, and also young talent. You look at Dele, and he gets criticism now. Of course he does. His career's really kind of dropped off a cliff in terms of his development, and he struggled to find any regular spot under the last 3-4 managers, pretty much. Even towards the end of Poch time, he was a bit in and out. But you look at the player he was, in his 18 to 21, 22-year-old, he was terrific, and I hope people don't forget that. This was a guy who, he wasn't a flat track bully. He wasn't just scoring against, the likes of the lower placed teams. This was a guy who was scoring in the big matches against Chelsea's, Arsenal's, Man United, Man City, Real Madrid. in big games, he was coming up for Tottenham, and he just had that natural instinct to find his way into the box at the right moment. And it's kind of, I guess it is poetic that he's going to a club where he'll have Frank Lampard as his manager, because he has a lot of what Frank Lampard had about him. Maybe, obviously, without the consistency that Lampard had across his career, but just that innate ability to know where the goal is as a midfielder. And, I've said this before, there's lots of reasons for why he never progressed, whether that be his role in Tottenham's team becoming less of a thing, especially with the emergence of Son, his inability maybe to adapt to different roles. You could question perhaps, well, certainly people have questioned his training and his kind of the standards he sets himself in training. But I just don't think there's any denying his talent. And for a young player, he really was set to be one of the world's best. And, I just hope he reignites the player within. He's gone now permanently. That is that. So there's no chance of a... Well, I mean, he said himself today in his message, closing this chapter but not the book. So you never know what the future holds. It was a lovely message he put out. Really good. Obviously, again, having just said that about social media people, I'd hope that he had a large input into that message if he didn't write it himself. But it was really nice, and another nice video that went with it. The deal itself is a strange one. I just wonder whether there's reasons for it. I'll explain it exactly. It's I've got it all written down here. That's it. It's initially a free transfer, but the conditions involved include £10 million fee if he plays 20 matches for Everton, which is not going to happen this season because because he's cup tied, I think the maximum he could play would be 18. So that 10 million itself is not going to appear until next season. And then I think there's all other performance-related add-ons and conditions that could be met that technically could take the whole thing up to almost £40 million, which is probably more what you'd expect or would have expected for Dele maybe a year or two ago. MK Dons would get a cut of any of that money. I think that would come back as well because I think they had a sell-on fee, so I think they would get that. But I just wonder, it's a weird deal, to let someone go on a free with future payments and conditions. I just wonder, and this is not confirmed anywhere, so it's purely me wondering out loud, whether it's something to do with... Everton have had financial fair play problems. I think even in the summer they had them. I think they alleviated some of them this month, but then obviously did some late deals in the window with Van der Beek going there, and obviously Dele. And I just wonder whether this was a slightly clever way of almost like doing a transfer with instalments that you're expecting probably anyway. I mean, there is an element of risk. He could get a bad injury and, it's only a 2.5-year deal. So he could get an injury that prevents him from making those 20 appearances. So there is that element of risk, but I just wonder if there's a reasoning behind that. And I just wonder whether it's a financial fair play or not. But, I really do wish him the best because he's just a guy that wanted to enjoy his football, did incredibly well for Tottenham, but just hit a brick wall in terms of his development. And whether that was outside influences, his side of things, or those around him. I saw that clip of Jose Mourinho, someone, I think it was maybe BT Sport, put it out again in the Amazon documentary, him having that chat with Dele. And it was an interesting one because a lot of what Jose was saying was true. Dele's face said that he probably didn't agree with a lot of it. And I just hope that there's been a realisation or a working out what comes next. It's not all his fault at all. But I think obviously there will be a part of his to play in his revival, and I really hope it comes as well because, like I say, I did feel really sad when I saw that stuff, and I'm not a very emotional guy. I'm probably more a 1950s man, not the most modern of chaps. But yeah, that pulled on the heartstrings. I did feel a little bit sad that 7-year era has come to an end. However little he was playing, it's just like something that you're so used to, I guess heading off. And the other outgoing, we haven't even finished the outgoings. It shows what a mad day it was yesterday. I was working till about 1 o'clock because of Delhi stuff. They put in a deal sheet, so it went really late. The final outgoing was Bryan Hill. Not a massive fan of that deal, I must say myself. Out of the 4, that's the one that slightly annoyed me. Although I understand the logic of it. I'm told the logic of it is Spurs see him as a long-term future at Tottenham. He's only 20. He's got a big, long contract. And they feel that he wasn't going to get as many minutes as he needs for his development this season. So they've sent him off to Valencia. Yes, it will help him. Confidence-wise, it will help him. It will help a very talented young player to grow and develop. Personally, I would have liked to have seen him, if he was going to have to go out on loan, maybe head off to an English side. Understandably, that's just me kind of spitballing an idea. It may have been that no Premier League sides came in, or if they did, they weren't going to offer him the amount of football that would have helped his development. So I understand that. I don't know. There's still a part of me that kind of feels that maybe he would have been better served by still being around that squad, fighting for his place, adapting to the culture, adapting to the football, and then just being ready for next summer. But I appreciate players want to play. And you know, I'm sure he would prefer to do that probably. But yeah, absolutely no option to buy in that one. Spurs have no interest in that, not even discussing that. And he will return. And obviously, it's got competition. There's been brought in competition, which we'll talk about in the new signing. I like Hill. I think he hasn't had too many chances. He hasn't started a Premier League game yet for Tottenham. And I think whenever he's come on, he's been a brighter spot than many of the other players that have come on. He's often played in kind of mashed up, messy teams where the rest of the players aren't maybe doing what they need to do. And he's probably still been a brighter light, but he's hard-working, he's creative. I do like him. I do like him a lot, and I think there's a lot more to come from him. You know, he's one of the most talented players in Spain. Sorry, talented young players. I saw was one of the Barcelona scouts. I did a little bit the other day on him, and one of the Barcelona scouts, I've forgotten his full name, Skierman something. I've forgotten his full name, but anyway, he actually compared him last season. He said he's probably the most talented young footballer in Spain right now, and he reminds him of a young like Neymar. And, Luis Enrique loves him for the Spain international squad as well. Thinks he's a really good footballer. I think there's more to come from Hill. Hopefully he has a terrific second half to the season. Obviously, I'm going to keep an eye on all of these loan players when I'm doing my roundups and everything. Hopefully he smashes it and comes back ready to fight and show Conte that he's ready. I think that's the big thing. Conte being convinced he's ready. And, another sign of the power that I think Conte wields now, that a player who Spurs only bought for, about 25 million with Lamela going the other way 6 months ago, is already heading out of the club. And again, we talk about back Conte. That is one of those things, it's not just about bringing players in. Sometimes it's about doing what the manager or head coach wants to do with the squad. So he is headed off as well, Bryan Hill, It's interesting when you look at it all. It's like Poch called for a painful rebuild. Is Conte calling for another rebuild of the absolutely botched rebuild? I know I said rebuild a lot there, but it's almost like they tried to rebuild. They brought in a fair few players, but they kind of messed it up. They didn't find the right fits. They didn't find the right personalities. They took maybe gambles on very talented players who perhaps didn't meet the, psychological profile for the task at hand, or to fit with the football or the group. I don't know. Scouting, there's so many elements to it. Was it all done exactly in the right way for these players that are bought? And that's why I say, are they kind of rebuilding to fix a rebuild? I just wonder when I look at these outgoings, and bearing in mind, like I say, two most expensive players in the club's history only bought 2.5 years ago, heading out the door. Player that came in 6 months ago, heading out the door. I don't know, it just leads me in that direction. I should state that Fabio Paratici is doing a thorough kind of evaluation he's been doing in recent months of all the parts of of the club, and one of those is the scouting department, and they've had a lot of overhaul there in the last few weeks, a lot of job adverts going out there for new scouts across the country as well. So hopefully, we'll see the benefits of that. I understand that the scouting department's budget is going to be raised to kind of a higher level than it previously has been, and more in line, I guess, with what he was used to at Juventus. So we should see the benefit of that in future transfer windows, as well as sports psychology. I saw they're looking to bring on a first-team sports psychologist, so that'd be an interesting thing. I don't think Spurs have had. I remember Poch being asked about it a few years back, and he said, well, no, myself and my staff provide that service. Whereas I think kind of Spurs are maybe one of the few that didn't have a dedicated psychologist. So that could all play its part as well. But yeah, I talk about scouting, and the irony is, with all that scouting, on the last day of the window, Tottenham signed a deal for 2 players, just Paratici going back to his old club and bringing in 2 of the players he'd originally signed for them. It's not the greatest look in the world. They had all month. They had pre-planning where you had lists of players as well before that meeting with Conte, and then you kind of act on whatever he said. But to do all of that, and then on the last day, essentially, yes, it was in the days before, but pretty much late on, go back to Juve and go, oh, can I have them? Oh, please, God, I bought them for you. You're not using them anymore. Please, can I have them? And it's a bit like, oh. Look, I'm being slightly facetious there because they are both players that I think will fit very well into what Conte wants and this Tottenham squad that he's trying to shape. So, I'm being slightly facetious. They do fit the profile, and I can understand why they were on the list, and I can understand why Paratici is a big fan of both of them. So I get it. I just don't think it's a great look for the managing director of football, who is considered, one of these transfer gurus in world football that casts his net wide across the globe for the players he wants from all these countries. And Daniel Levy chased him for half a decade trying to bring him in, and he brings him in. And in the first transfer window where Antonio Conte is there, he signs 2 players from their old club late on. I think more could have been done. Of course. They wanted a right wing back. They didn't get one. They wanted a striker, another person to back up Harry Kane, finally to fix that festering hole in the squad. It's really annoying. They didn't get one. There were missed opportunities, of course, Adama Traore, Luis Diaz, who, yes, the last video on this channel is me going, I love Luis Diaz, he's great, sign him. And ultimately, many people were sceptical that it would happen. And again, the scepticism wins the day, because I kind of felt with both of those transfers, it was almost like, were Spurs played? Perhaps they were. It's like both Traore and Diaz had preferred clubs. Adama Traore had always said he wanted to go back to Barcelona one day. Diaz, we know, he wanted to go to Liverpool, who'd had a long-term interest in him. And it almost felt like Spurs were played slightly in terms of trying to flush out those interested teams to actually make a move, and both did. It really wasn't that great at all. It just wasn't. Spurs were furious about the Diaz stuff. They really were. From what I understand, within that club, they were blaming everyone. They were blaming leaks. They were blaming that. They were blaming leaks to the media. But the story originally broke in... where was it? It was in Portugal. No one from Spurs is leaking that to the Portuguese media. If, logic would suggest that all along, and this is just me guessing or wondering, you'd think that anyone involved in the players' camps, having had talks with Liverpool in the past, would have been asked to keep them updated on any transfers that might happen with that player. Spurs got involved. Liverpool became aware. There's no great, I don't think, rocket science behind it, or no real kind of subterfuge to it all. I think the Spurs went in for 2 players that they liked. I mean, they still claim that there was no bid made for Adama Traore this month, only talks held. They did bid for, what's his name, for Luis Diaz, and they were willing to go to the price that they wanted. But, you know, it just, I don't know if you can hear, there's a dog outside being very angry. I think it's my neighbour's dog. He's very angry about the Luis Diaz thing. He was a big fan of the Porto wing. I really wanted Spurs to sign him. And yeah, it just like, they were willing to go, but ultimately Diaz wanted to go to Liverpool. Ultimately Traore wanted to go to Barcelona. I've seen people saying, oh, you know, but if they'd gone in earlier in the window, they would have got these players. I don't believe so, because I think you'd just have the same scenario where the other clubs would have been alerted. I find it maybe staggering that Tottenham weren't aware that they'd be alerted by it. That worries me maybe more than any of it. But, you know, Diaz would have been terrific. Of course he would. He would have been a superb player. He's a top-level player. And I think he'll smash it at Liverpool, give them another dimension. Traore, you know my thoughts on Adama Traore. I don't think that's the biggest miss in the world for Tottenham, but Diaz definitely. Yeah, really weird, those 2 transfers in particular. I just think, did Spurs think they were going to steal in there quickly, get it all to an advanced stage? It was too late. But is it ever too late? As we saw, remember, with Willian back in the day. You can even have your medical and pretty much have everything almost signed. If the other club that you prefer to go to wants you, and there's any sense they might come in, you hold off until they come in. And yeah, 2 weird ones. But, you know, Antonio Conte asked his specific request. The club had identified, or said this in previous videos, the club had identified a right wing back, a centre-back, a left-sided centre-back, and a striker as the 3 players they felt the squad needed. Antonio Conte came in and said, all right, yeah, no, I get those, but I really would like a central midfielder. That was the one he called for. Centre-back idea got pushed off to the summer, and Conte got his central midfielder. He did. So he got the one thing he specifically asked for, so that's a positive. And who he got, of course, was Rodrigo Bentancur, who is only 24. He's achieved a hell of a lot at 24. He's won 3 Serie A titles. He moved from Boca Juniors to... it's really weird. It's one of those where my knowledge of him previously, like way back in the past, was probably from Football Manager. I'm sure when I used to play as Spurs back in the day, I used to sign him from Boca Juniors as this very talented young player. And then he went to Juve. Took a little time to settle in, but, you know, won 3 league titles there. And in that 3rd of the consecutive 3 league titles, I think it was the 1920 season, he was pivotal. He was, you know, I think it was it Sarri's team? I'm trying to think who it was. I think it would have been. Yeah, there was pretty much everyone, you know, knows anything about Italian football would have said he was probably their best midfielder. And he was only 22 in that season as well. Since then, probably hasn't quite hit those heights, and especially this season, Allegri's formation doesn't maybe naturally suit him. But a very talented player who Paratici really likes, and I think Conte very much signed off on it as well. And the deal's quite interesting. You know, it's another one. It's a classic Tottenham deal. It's very good when you look at it. Bear in mind, he's a 24-year-old Uruguayan international, 3 times title winner. He is... Yeah, Spurs are going to pay Juventus £15.86 million, which is payable over 3 years. And that could increase by another £5 million if certain objectives are met during his 4.5-year contract that he signed at Tottenham. So, financially, it's a very good deal. And I think he will add a lot to that centre midfield. You know, yes, it's not a straight swap for any of the players who have departed. He is more of a box-to-box / defensive midfielder. He, you know, fits that very much that group of Skip, Højbjerg and Winks. There's some debate when I talk to people who kind of have watched him whether he better fits a midfield 3 or whether he can play in a 2 with the right partner. So it'd be intriguing to see how Conte works that, whether he goes with a 3-4-3 or whether he switches to a 3-5-2 to get the best out of him. In the season they won the league, he was quite creative. It was either 7 or 8 assists, I think he weighed in with, maybe more. So he can do it. I remember Pirlo compared him to Iniesta with his ability to hold on to the ball. I think he likes to kind of rush forward with it as well. Quite aggressive in terms of he picks up a fair few yellow cards, so that's maybe going to have to be tempered slightly in the Premier League because that could prove to be a bit of an issue. But yeah, he'll join up with Spurs later this week. He's off with Uruguay. I think they've got a match, I think it's tonight, against Venezuela. So you'd imagine he'll rock up at Spurs maybe Thursday, potentially. So, whether he gets to play a part of the weekend is another thing. But yeah, I think he'll be a good signing. He's one that I think there's a good ceiling with, quite a higher ceiling to work with. I think Conte will really enjoy working with him. He knows Serie A inside out, Conte. So, he won't have signed off on a player, even if Paratici loves him, unless he felt that he would benefit and improve this squad. And I think Bentancur is going to be it's going to be a very good signing. I'm intrigued to see what that means for the others in that central midfield role. Maybe specifically Harry Winks, although potentially Harry Winks is maybe out of the three has been the one who's been threading through balls, playing balls over the top, maybe the most creative out of them. So if there's a worry that they haven't got enough creativity deeper, maybe he continues to play in that respect as well. So, but yeah, no, I think that's a good signing. Like I say, I'll dig out the fact slightly that he just went back to Juventus on the last day, but that's not to the detriment of the signings. It's just, I think, maybe the perception of it. So Bentancur, yes, I think he'll be good. And a permanent signing as well. So we'll see what he brings. And we also got a creative, very versatile attacker in Dejan Kulusevski, who, yeah, he's an interesting one. I think in the early days with this move was I could kind of see it was likely to start to progress. I think because it was still in the Luis Diaz headspace, it was like, oh, but Diaz is so great, he's never going to be as good as him, which is harsh because I think they're very different players as well. I wasn't crying. It made it sound like I was crying about it. But yeah, Kulusevski, he's 21 years old. He can play on the right. He can play centrally as an attacking midfielder. He can play up front as like an auxiliary striker as well. So that's another option there to support or potentially allow Kane to have some minutes of rest. Kulusevski was Serie A Young Player of the Year in the 1920 season. It's only 2 years ago. Paratici loves him. I was watching Di Marzio, the Italian journalist, was talking about him on Sky Sports News. He was raving about him. He said, there's an incredible player in there. I mean, he certainly was very good. He had 2 loan spells at Parma, one from Atalanta, I think, and then one when he signed for Juventus, he went back. He definitely is a player that Conte wanted at Inter. But he lost out to Juve, and then he went and did that great second season loan at Parma, which won him that Young Player of the Year award in Serie A. He's physically, I can understand bringing him in. Physically, let's say, compared to someone like Bryan Hill, he is more ready for the Premier League. He's a big lad. Like I say, he's only 21, but he's built well, and physically you'd think he'd be able to handle what the league is going to throw at him. I've heard people say he's not the fastest, but he's got good skill on the ball, an eye for a pass, good decision maker. He's a Swedish international. I've got the details of his deal is quite interesting as well. So he essentially arrives on loan. It's an 18-month loan, which Spurs will pay £8.3 million for. And the breakdown of that is £2.5 million for the rest of this season, £5.8 million for next season. And there's also an obligation to buy him permanently if he meets certain criteria. I presume that's appearances. And also an option if he doesn't meet those. And both of those are £29.2 million, which again, in classic Spurs ways, is payable within 5 years. So it can properly be spread out, that. Yeah, he's a really interesting one. I listened to his interview as well. Obviously, watched as much as I could of him in action, and his interview was quite interesting with Spurs. Every word was Conte. The words Conte would love. It was very much about the team. I will do this for the team. It's not about me. Everything I do in my way of playing, is for others, and that's what Conte wants. He doesn't do mavericks. He doesn't do showboaters. He wants players that have, he said it. He told me this himself when I asked him about something. I can't remember what it was, but he said, that I have very set tasks for every player in my squad. Every player that plays on the pitch knows they have these certain things I expect them to do on the day and for others. And it sounds to me like Kulusevski is going to be that kind of person that's going to revel in that. Currently with the 3-4-3, Conte has his 2 number 10s that sit behind Harry Kane. He fits perfectly into that because he's able to operate in the centre, but also able to go out onto the right, link up with the wing back and get crosses into the box as well. Similar to what Sonny would do on the left. So he does fit it very well. And it's like a try as you buy kind of deal. And if you think about it, if he smashes it over the next 18 months and absolutely fits into Premier League life really well, 29.2 million is nothing for someone that would be, 22, maybe 23 by that point, who would be doing very well in the Premier League. And if he doesn't, the loan just kind of ends, unless obviously he's played a certain amount of games. But I like the look of him. Especially, I'd say at Juve, he's maybe been slightly more in and out, although I think he's in recent games has been a bit more quite involved. He looks like he plays a lot of minutes. He plays in a lot of matches, but only half of those have been starts. The last 5 games or so, I think he scored a couple of goals in those 5 games. He scored against Roma and possibly Udinese. There was another one. I remember he scored against Roma. I saw that. And he's a good option, a good versatile option. And everyone that seems to rave about him just feels that he just needs to continue to develop, and hopefully Tottenham will get the best of him. So while I am not entirely impressed by the methods and the lack of planning, I guess, that led to 2 incomings from Paratici's old club on the final day, I do totally feel that both players will fit what Conte's trying to do nicely. And I mean, you look at that squad now, there really shouldn't be any unhappy dissenting voices in there. Even the likes of, let's say a Matt Doherty, who maybe thought he was going to get away, will probably get a fair few minutes now as the window goes on. Maybe the one you could say would probably have a bit of grievance would be Joe Rodon. I thought he might go out on loan this month. I think he thought he probably would go out on loan this month. There was interest from clubs in France, Spain, Premier League, but nothing that really attracted him and Spurs to let him go. And even that, I don't get the impression that Joe Rodon in any way is, someone that will voice those disappointments or kind of rock the boat in any way. And that's not to say others have, but clearly they were very big players or expensive players not playing, and that maybe creates more of a tension and an issue than for a younger, defender who, to be fair, has come in from Swansea, and maybe has slightly less expectation placed on them. I like Joe Rodon though. I think if he gets a few chances, I think he will show what he can do. And especially being unlucky. He's had a rib injury recently, which has kind of maybe stopped Conte picking him in that central role, because he is the backup to Eric Dyer. He's kind of been there and thereabouts on the bench, but hasn't really been fit enough, I don't think, to really play a big role. And I mean, if you're going to look at it in the cold light of the day, 4 players went out, only 2 came in. So yes, in terms of numbers, probably the squad has been weakened in that respect, but I would probably counter that, I guess, if you're going to play devil's advocate, with the fact that there were players who weren't really going to play. They just weren't. Conte kind of made that clear. I mean, remember that last game, it was against Chelsea, wasn't it? Harvey White was on the bench. Lo Celso was not. Tanguy Ndombele was not. Dele Alli was not. Those players were, they might have been re-assimilated into team to play some games, but they were never really seriously going to be an option. And you look at the squad now, Conte made it very clear he wanted, in his ideal squad, would have 2 players for every position. Not less, not more. I think that was the kind of the right amount for him. That's, 22 players plus another keeper. 23-man squad, which is probably about right. I think Poch used to like a 24-man squad? I think he used to like. He's almost got it, the 2-man for every. Obviously, he hasn't got another striker. There's no Harry Kane backup. That's not there. That is still, as I quite grossly realised I described as earlier, as a festering hole within the squad. Because it is a problem that is festering. It is just sticking there and getting worse and not being fixed. But elsewhere, if you're going to look at Japhet Tanganga as the backup left-sided centre-back, got Roden in the middle, there is 2 for every role. There is. Maybe say that Kulusevski, Bergwijn and Lucas are maybe all more right-sided players, but all 3 of them can play on the left if required. But other than that, there are 2 for every position, apart from the striker. So it is kind of what he wanted in that regard. There's a few of the young players they didn't send out on loan, like Harvey White, like Jamie Bowden was brought back from Oldham and not sent out again. And obviously they'll be there or thereabouts if needed. Because this is the problem. Yes, I get it that he wants a lean, hungry squad. But in a season when you can not only have injuries, but you can also have COVID issues and obviously suspensions, all the other usual stuff, I just wonder whether this is not the season to have a smaller, leaner squad. Again, he could say in response, Spurs are not in the Europa Conference League anymore. They're not going to appeal. It's a bit late now anyway. I think the games are being played in about a fortnight. But yeah, it went to their lawyers and they decided not to appeal. So Spurs don't have that extra element of the European matches in midweeks. They're going to have a few, obviously, rescheduled games. But really, it's not going to be an absolute nightmare in terms of, obviously, if they could progress in the FA Cup, they'll have more matches. But I don't think it's going to be the absolute pile-up, which would have given a lot of fringe players minutes that it would have had if the European competition was still going on. So, somewhere in the middle. Excuse me, it's... Just trying to think about it. It is more of a Conte squad. You've got Christian Romero's back in, should hopefully be back this weekend. We'll find out more on Friday, but he must be ready now. Conte's excited about working with him properly now. He's going to build that defence around him. You've got Sonny should be back as well, really. Hopefully back for this weekend. Again, another one we'll find out the final kind of prognosis, as it were. They were both pretty close just before the international break, so you'd imagine 2 weeks later they'll be ready. So that's 2 big players to come back. I think if you look across a fair bit of the squad, there's good options. Central midfield's got good options. Centre-back now with Romero back is a bit of a different beast. You've got Hugo Lloris fresh from his new contracts in goal. Left-backs, I feel that there's 2 really good left wing-backs there who are going to develop. I think Reguilon needs to learn how to be a wing-back, which I think he will, because I do think it actually suits his attributes. Ryan Sessegnon will continue to develop, especially under someone like Conte. Attacking midfield, you've got Bergwijn, Lucas, Kulusevski, Sonny. So that's 4 kind of players all flitting around that as well. Yes, you've lost that deeper attacking midfielder that Giovani, Lo Celso and Tanguy would have brought you. That hasn't been replaced, but those who I speak to who kind of watch a lot of Conte football in the past tell me that he doesn't really play with those kind of players. It's very much about more functional players in the middle that can get the ball quickly to whether it's a 3 up front or a 2 up front. And there's a lot of focus on those wing backs as well to create. Left side, we know they will. Right back, clearly, is still an issue. Emerson Royale is only 22. He's going to have to be worked on. He's going to have to really work on that final product. Not only the crossing, but also being at the other end of crosses from the left, being the guy at the back. And that's something that Matt Doherty used to do really well at Wolves. And, he may get more chances to show, what he can do. Like I say, I thought he did well against Leicester. Thought he had an impact. Very much not so against Chelsea. Him and Sessegnon both playing as more orthodox wingers weren't great at all. And maybe that's from coming slightly further up the pitch rather than coming from deeper positions. Maybe that affected their ability to run on and create. But I think Doherty will get chances. And it's up to him to show that he can offer more than Emerson Royale can. There's enough there. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I've seen a lot of different reactions on social media. I've seen people saying it was the most horrendous transfer window ever. It was like, I've seen people say 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10. I've seen other people saying it was a terrific transfer window and a lot of the stuff was done. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I'd probably give it a 6, a push. I'd say getting those players out was a big thing for Conte. And I think you'll see that. I think he'll have a very malleable squad now. A real one he can mould and that all will buy into what he wants them to do. And that's crucial for a coach. We saw it under Poch when he first started. There was a real kind of thing of getting little clicks out or getting players out that he felt maybe were too much of an influence, or players that he just felt actually, while they were very talented individuals, didn't actually add to the kind of the sum of its parts, the whole thing, And I'm not comparing these current crop with any of those players or anything, but it's more the fact that I think if Conte sees his vision of a squad and who's in it and who's not, the closer they can get to that, the better. Of course, there's more to be done. But I do think, Conte, the biggest thing he wanted was a start to be made. He wanted the process to begin. And I think with 3 big players going out the door that he doesn't want, a young player who needs more time to develop in his eyes going out, and 2 players who are used to winning. Bentancur particularly is a 3-time title winner, like I say, in Italy. These are people that they know what it's like to play for a big club. They know what it's like to have that expectation and that pressure put upon you. They are 2 additions that are going to make a difference. They do. Just think about the right wing back one. Perhaps he could look to do what he was going to do with Traore. Maybe he could do that with a Steven Bergwijn. Maybe he could do that with Lucas Moura. I'm not entirely sure about their defensive side of the game. They like to track back. They've worked very hard. Would I like to see either of them sliding in for tackles or trying to win headers in their own box? Maybe not. But that might be something he looks at if it's not working with Emerson or Doherty. We shall see. But like I said, that then kind of goes away from the 2 players for each position kind of idea. But Conte earns the big bucks because he is one of the world's best coaches. Not just managers, but coaches. And I really do firmly believe that he will improve a lot of these players as the season goes on. He'll have more full weeks to work with them now. There'll be less weeks that are interrupted by matches and recovery sessions, tactical preparation sessions. There will be lots more time for him to work one-on-one with players, work on the shape of the team, work on, like I say, all those tasks he wants players to undertake. I wouldn't say I'm like, oh God, Spurs have really slipped up in the chase for the top 4 or anything like that. You look at others and how they've done in the window. I wouldn't say anyone. Liverpool obviously are probably... Liverpool with Diaz have made a big signing there. But I'd say elsewhere, you look at stuff, City signed, was it Alvarez? That's for the summer. Arsenal probably weakened their squad, I think, maybe. Obviously, there's different opinions on that, and bear in mind, again, with someone like Aubameyang, was he going to play anyway? And Man U, have they strengthened or not? Probably not. But obviously, they had a high-level player there already. West Ham, maybe similar. I don't think Tottenham... I wouldn't say they're in a worse position. Are they slightly weaker for numbers? Yes, I think I said that right at the top of the video. But in terms of being, closer to what Conte wants, I think they are. And I think that will make it easier for him to coach them and improve them for the remainder of this season. Again, it's all dependent on no more COVID outbreaks, no injury crisis, of course. It is a leaner squad. Yeah, I'm not too down on it at all. I'm not. I like the two signings. I do. And I think the key really was also, as I said earlier, those around him say Conte is content with what's been started in the process. And I think that was key because, Conte's not shy at letting his feelings be known. He may still not be if they have an injury crisis. He may still make them known, but, he's been backed in certain ways. He hasn't been backed with huge mega money signings. Of course he hasn't. And I know most people using that back Conte phrase, that's what they're trying to get at. But he has been backed into decisions being made behind the scenes very much about what he wanted. Spurs really are chucking away kind of money on some of these big players that they've put out the door. Albeit they could potentially get most of it back if things go their way. I'm not too down on it. I'm not at all. I think we'll see this Conte's team building in the way he wants it to in the weeks ahead. I think the two signings will get plenty of minutes and you'll see their impact on it. Obviously, 3 games coming up that are difficult, but Spurs, will be wanting to win all of those. Then the trip to City, which is a lot more difficult. And then I think it's Leeds away. So, Spurs can try and get some momentum going. Conte can work with these players. And, I'm not downbeat at all about it. I've seen some people acting like it's the end of the world. Like I say, I think the process has started. I think the summer will be huge. I think there'll be more of an overhaul then. I think you'll see more. Antonio Conte would have gone into that evaluation meeting and he would have very clearly said, there are players here in this category that I believe I'm quite happy to work with until the end of the season, and then we'll look at them again in the summer, and potentially they're the ones that can be upgraded. And, we'll all have different opinions on who those players are, but I think it's part of this process. I think the process has begun, and that's key. Other little things very quickly before I head off. Obviously, Christian Eriksen has gone back to. He's come back to the Premier League. He's playing for Brentford. I think everyone will be keeping a very close eye on him. I hope he does really good things for them. And would Spurs go for him in the summer? I don't know. It depends whether you're seeing the prime Christian Eriksen that Spurs had, not the one in the last year. And Conte was a bit funny with him at Inter. He didn't really play much in the first year he was there. Towards the end of the second season, he kind of did. I think the most important thing is that Christian Eriksen gets back to playing football, enjoys himself, and there are no issues with him. I think that's what we all want to see. Marcus Edwards, Sporting have signed him. It's kind of one of those classic kind of deals that you sometimes see in foreign leagues where Sporting have bought half of him. He will play for them, but they bought half of his rights. And I believe Spurs will get some money out of that deal. It's a little bit complicated. I'm still kind of trying to extrapolate all the correct information about it so I don't say the wrong stuff. But all I can kind of say at this moment is I do believe Spurs will get some money because they had, I think it was a 50% sell-on fee with him. So I think they'll get some money from that deal, which was about £6.5 million, something like that. So they'll get some of that. And it may be the case that they retain some rights, but I've got to firm that up exactly what that is. It was Victoria he was at as well. So Brighton this weekend, big FA Cup game that's been buried almost in the night on Saturday night, which is so unbelievably helpful for everyone who has to get back in the night. But there you go, especially those Brighton fans, the way scheduling works. But hopefully we'll see one, if not two, of the new faces involved in the squad. There are only 2 of them, I'm aware of that. It'll be a strange one. It will be certain players we can't really debate in terms of will they play or won't they play. There'll be players that we may still question whether they should have gone, especially as I'm sure in some of the leagues they've gone to, they will do very well. Hopefully they do, because that's what you want for everyone, really. But it's more of a Tottenham Hotspur squad shaped in the image of Antonio Conte, and that could be the thing that starts to push them in the right direction. The man's a winner, and that's what we want Tottenham to be in the end, winners. So there you go. I'm going to head off now. A very interesting transfer window. Thanks for sticking with me through it all, and the highs and the lows, and the constant changing of things. And things that can be correct one minute and then the next day have been blown apart by other clubs and things like that. And you've watched me get excited and sad again. But there we go. We got through it. Hopefully Tottenham, although a bit leaner, maybe we'll be in a better place for it. So, yeah, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later.